Taxonomy basically deals with naming. So imagine in our case also, if we don't have a particular name, then it will be really difficult to identify us or to give who is who. So that in that way, definitely a taxonomy plays a major role. And in biology, taxonomy means it is the scientific study of naming, defining and classifying groups of biological organisms based on shared characteristics. And this actually falls under systematics, and systematics is more broader, which involves identification, taxonomy, as well as phylogenetics. And in identification, it's mainly that when we have to identify something, definitely we have to start with its name. For example, if we saw one insect, definitely our next interest will be like, who is that? So similar way, identification means, for example, in case of humans, if we take, okay, we identify this as that, and in zoological, scientific name also given like Homo sapiens. And in the taxonomy, that itself is not enough. The taxonomy it is little more broader, in which we try to classify them. For example, we know that human beings are classified in the class Mammalia or the primates and all. In similar way, for example, whatever we see, we have to classify it like, okay, this belong to class A or class B like that. In the phylogenetics, it is one step ahead. That is, we have to understand their relationship between each other. For example, we know that in this we will tell that, okay, this is a species. For example, this is a Homo sapiens, and they are more closely related to apes than monkeys, and definitely in comparison to fishes, there is very, very distinct there. And in the taxonomy again, there are alpha taxonomy, beta taxonomy, and gamma taxonomy. So alpha taxonomy normally it's very basic level. That is, here the species are first characterized and named. Characterized in the sense that, okay, they should have some characteristics to distinguish them from the other. So that characteristics has to be listed out separately, and then we give a proper name. For example, suppose if we are identifying a butterfly, definitely we know that we know certain characteristics of butterfly. So accordingly only we are understanding, okay, it's a butterfly. And in next stage we have to provide a name like that. So same alpha taxonomy deals with the basics of taxonomy, while in beta taxonomy, here it's like one step ahead. Like we have to classify, okay, since I found one organism, for example butterfly, the next method is like to classify whether it is a chordate or non-chordate, or to other higher categories. And finally, the gamma taxonomy, in which already the phylogenetics also role play, and even we know that after species also there are different taxa exist. So we have to check whether the intraspecific variations and the in evolutionary relationship between these different species. So starting with that, the history of taxonomy can be traced long back, that is in BC itself, and hence this Aristotle is identified as the father of biological classification. And when he classified, he started like the groups into two, one with blood and other without blood. And now we know that majority of the vertebrates are could be the one which he classified as that, and definitely without blood though they have, but it is like having different pigmentation. So basically based upon the red color he must have classified. And later he also identified that there are like corals and all, which is he classified as zoophytes, meaning plant animals. And again, one thing he was clear that he believed that animals could be further arranged based on the complexity, to as their scalar and scalar natura, and based upon its classification, listed based upon the characteristics and the similarities they shared. The whale was placed under class fishes, although we know that it is a mammal now. So coming to the modern classification, the father of this is identified as Carolus Linnaeus, and he's the one who proposed binomial nomenclature, means having a proper genera name and a species name. And he also started publishing a book known as Systema Naturae, and his classification involves an orderly arrangement of animals and plants under successive sets of group known as taxa. And based upon his classification, like he classified as species beyond that, genus, family, order, class, phylum, etc. So earlier the trend was to classify was basically directly based upon the visible characteristics, and it was mainly through the morphological approaches, and in the modern trend has taken the advancements of science, and even in the morphological approach when they classify, we use the scanning electron microscopic images. For example, viruses and all is too small to visible. So with the help of scanning electron microscope, we can clearly distinguish the different morphology, and accordingly we could classify it. And otherwise it's like just by naming, by seeing their structures. For example, below the mosquitoes, different mosquito species are given, and by morphology itself we can make some classifications. Second is the embryological. So embryology means in the embryological stage, in our embryo, as when we are embryo, once beginning from how this single cell zygote get transformed. So that time itself, there are some changes between the groups, and that could be used to distinguish the groups into different taxas. Then coming to the ecological classification, in which we use ecology means something related to the environment. So we can classify it as, for example, within the fish, marine fishes, freshwater fishes, like that, or based upon their food habits, like producers, carnivorous, decomposers, like that. And next level of classification is based upon the behavior, and maybe some behaviors, for example, even it's very unique to some groups. So based upon that also behavior also we could classify the organisms. And finally it is in the cell level, the cytological approach, in which even with the help of there's an ideogram that where the different chromosomes are given, and according to their sizes, shape, and all, we can classify it further, and even we can identify any anomalies or exist. Then coming to the numerical taxonomy, it's also known as phonetics. So here what they do is, it's a system in which we try to group by providing weightage to different characters or states. And here it is not directly based upon any genetic relatedness. Here what they do is, we provided, for example, okay, this many groups are sharing this many characteristics, so definitely it will be A1. So in the similar way, all such characters are given equal weightage, and those it could be classified under similar species or genus based upon the number of characters they share. So this has a disadvantage also, because it is not that relationship is based upon any phylogenetic and all, and it requires statistics. Whatever dealing with statistics, it requires a lot of data. So if we stick on to 5 or 6 parameters and then we try to classify them, it will be difficult, and so the quality of this numerical taxonomy increases with increase in the number of traits or attributes we select. Next is evolutionary taxonomy, in which basically mainly the evolutionary thing we seek. For example, their relationship, how distinct they are or how near they are, and based upon the changes happened, accordingly we can classify. But still, it is and it is widely used, especially in the case of microbes and all, which is not distinguishable by any other features. The cladistic taxonomy is the base of this phylogenetic analysis, phylogenetics. So here a clade means it's a biological group of species, and these clades will share many attributes in common. And this is not just based upon any morphological similarity, and based upon the ancestor, and it's like, for example, we know that the cat and the leopard looks different, but based on their ancestry, they have originated from the same group. So accordingly, these are placed very near to one another. So in this, classification is different from the phonetics level, because in the phonetics, as I said, when the numerical taxonomy, it could be like A and B could be classified as the same species and C will be separate. But when we consider the evolutionary thing, actually the B and C are more related than the A. And these are, again, we have to, one thing you have to keep in mind, that the cladogram and the phenogram are entirely different. Then coming to molecular taxonomy, so in this, molecules means DNA, RNA or protein molecules are considered here. And we know that from the gene only that proteins are signaled. So 3 genes encode 1 amino acid. So in the similar way, in the molecular taxonomy, based upon the similarity, we could classify and prepare this type of phylogenetic tree to show its relatedness. And here it's not that full DNA is subjected to this, only specific segment which is highly variable. For example, in case of prokaryotic identification, we use 16S ribosomal subunit, and in case of eukaryotes, we use 18S subunit. Similar way, we can study on different genes like mitochondrial genes, chloroplast genes, etc., which is having which show some variations for the classification, and it is very accurate. So last slide is regarding the importance of classification. So it's already told that there are different groups exist, and there is an importance, as we know, because, for example, if we know as group, it will be easier for us to for the biodiversity and conservation. Then economically important of species, for example, we should know which is edible fishes and which is having high protein content, and if we classify like that, this could have a high market value. Then in the pest management, we should be knowing that what type of pest, and if we have a proper name, then we can start thinking about a proper control measure also. In health science, we know that some of the cancers are caused by microbes. So such groups need to be identified and to understand, and to have a better this thing for the health. And as an indicator and biomonitoring, we know that there are different groups, and these groups, if we are able to classify properly, then we can exploit this thing in further.